Perfect. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. I don't know if I explained it well enough what I was doing when we had first talked, but I'm a student. Like I'm not a journalist or anything or a reporter, but I wanted to be able to potentially just write a story about like your experience, because I think it's a really inspiring story of like, especially leading up to this big event. But I also want you to know that you're like in full control. If you don't want to answer anything, you don't need to. And then before I write anything, I'll send everything to you.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so are you all good to start?
Yeah. I have. You're gonna laugh when I say this, and I'm gonna sound like a narcissist when I say this, but I am expecting a call from the New York Times in the next couple of hours. So if that happens, I'll just need to call you back.
Yeah, of course. No worries.
So it's all, man, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how much just engagement this is getting. Because most of the time, these executions, nobody cares at all.
Yeah, I completely understand that. That's also why I felt such a need to reach out to you, because like I'm obviously not in a position where like I understand that, but like I grew up in a family that was like, my mother was a death penalty lawyer, like my godfather was like wrongfully incarcerated. Both of them were.
Right. Yeah, you told me that. That's really cool.
Yeah, so like I really want to use your experience to kind of push this more to the mainstream. But I wanted to reach out to kind of talk about a lot of the things leading up to this case, because obviously it's so pressing.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I wanted to first start by talking to you about the safety risk. Now, I know that since the Department of Corrections agreed to some of the terms of your suit, you've come out and said that you're proceeding with the state, obviously, and acknowledged that there's like a very real risk of your safety with this execution method.
Right.
And you had also mentioned before that you said that it was important that your 5 children were aware of what their father was standing for. I just wanted to ask how you and your family are preparing for this date.
No, I think that's a good question. You know, for us, it's obviously it's frightening to some degree. I mean, there's no getting around that, and there's also no getting around. We have 5 children. I've got twins that are 11. I have a 10-year-old and twins that are 8. And so we're a big family. Although not as big as some, I've seen bigger. But I think that basically the conversation has consistently been, this is something I need to do, and when you need to do something, and when you need to, have faith, and when you need to engage moments of justice, you do it. You don't hesitate. And so I think that our children, they're very aware of why I do this. They're certainly very aware that this has happened. This will be my 5th execution in right at a year. And so they're very aware of these guys. They've talked to these guys. They know what's going on. And so that part is not all that surprising to them. What is surprising to them is that the state would do anything that would endanger me. Mm-hmm. And my son, my oldest, one of the twins, one of the 11-year-old twins, he said, I said, well, I said, they keep on saying that the risk is near zero. And he cut me off before I could finish what I was saying. He said, the risk should be 0. And, even an 11-year-old is able to understand that. They're able to understand that, there shouldn't be a price to be paid for, simply ministering to someone, trying to help someone. You shouldn't face, one of the things that I think has been, really apparent to me through all of this is, in the South, there's this consistent mantra of, that's spoken over and over again about less government, pushing back, don't tread on me, that type of thing. And I can't think of any greater tyranny than a government, possibly making someone sign a waiver that if they, that they could possibly suffocate them when exercising their First Amendment rights to minister to someone. I mean, it's I guess I'm just trying to say even my children find it absurd, and they understand. As far as my wife is concerned, of course, she's appalled that all of this is happening, but she understands. She understands. As far as practical things go, me and my wife's name is Emily, and me and Emily have, discussed what it would look like if something did happen. We have talked about, what would immediately need to happen. She has had, a number of phone calls with my attorney, basically, kind of outlining various scenarios and what kind of would be required in those moments, particularly her getting to Alabama as quickly as possible, and also, them pursuing legal action as quickly as possible. And, it's a strange thing to, be discussing, your own demise, the potential of your own demise in such ways. But at the same time, it is a matter of faith for me. It's a matter of trusting that God has called me to this work, and that God will see me through this work, no matter what that looks like. The gospel is very consistent in saying that the love of God and the presence of Jesus, where it will never leave you nor forsake you. And so I think that I've just had to trust in that, and I've had to encourage my family to trust in that. One funny thing that did happen was one of my sons, he knows where, like, I keep a stash of, like fruit snacks and, snacks like that. And he said, if something happens to you, can I have the snacks? And so it was one of my 8-year-olds, so I thought that was pretty funny. But he wanted to make sure that the snacks were going to be okay. But yeah, I mean, and I think as far as friends and whatnot go, I mean, they are, they're appalled. They keep calling, and and I think, now that it's getting closer and it's getting more media coverage, they're beginning to realize how serious this is. And, so that's been interesting. It's almost as if, and this is kind of a crazy way to say it, it's almost like I'm getting to experience, like, my own funeral. Like, I mean, I've got all of these people calling me and telling me how much I mean to them and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I don't know, like, and that's the thing. We don't know the risk. I mean, obviously, we're not. This is not a situation where I'm going in to be executed intentionally. But we do know. I mean, unlike obviously Kenny, but we do know that this is a situation where there is real risk and there should be no risk. And I'll also say this, as far as various experts that we've engaged with in the legal action, prominent anesthesiologists from all over the country, big hospitals, big schools, big medical schools, and they've all, said, don't go in there, please don't go in there. And but I can't imagine not being there for Kenny. I can't imagine not being there to, offer him the comfort that I think we all deserve as human beings. That we are loved, we are seen as children of God, and that we are known, and we are acknowledged, and our life matters. And I think those are things that are so important to me. And and of course, I think everybody deserves that. So that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I also wanted to talk to you about how obviously there's very real safety concerns, like we said, and you had to sign a waiver as well when you agreed to be the spiritual advisor. And you had also stated before that you've never in the other 4 cases had to fill out a waiver before. When you first read this document, what were your thoughts? And did you feel any pressure by the DOC to sign?
Oh, of course. I mean, I knew if I didn't sign it, I wouldn't be able to be there for Kenny. I mean, I knew that I was going to have to sign it. But yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre. Can you imagine, going to priests and pastors in New York to, this weekend and saying, hey, you got to sign a waiver to preach a Sunday sermon. You've got to sign a waiver to serve communion. You've got to sign a waiver to counsel and minister to people. I mean, this is America. Such things shouldn't happen. And so, signing the waiver again speaks of the tyranny of this politic of death, and this politic of that only values some lives, that doesn't value all life. And so yeah, I mean, it's the document is a political document in and of itself that reveals. I'll put it this way. I think that in Alabama, it's all of these folks, they talk about their religion, and they talk about what they believe all the time. That's just part of the politic of everything. Well, I think very clearly that as far as I'm concerned, their religion is death, their spirituality is suffering, and their sacrament is suffocation. These are this is a situation where that waiver is a religious document, and what that document shows is that these folks in Alabama have no concept of God, of love, of justice whatsoever.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an amazing way to put it. Geez. I wasn't expecting that, but that was beautiful. Let's talk about how, when you first got in touch with Kenny. So you said that before, when you first reached out, one of the first things he asked you was if you were prepared to die to be his spiritual advisor. Can you tell me a bit about your first interaction that you two had?
Yeah, so I was connected to him through, I was with Casey McWhorter back in November when he was executed in Alabama. And, of course, Casey and Kenny knew each other. And so there were others who, knew other folks that I'm in touch with on death row down there that were close to Kenny. But, he basically said, this ain't going to be no, typical execution. We don't know what's going to happen. And, I think that, this thing is bizarre in so many ways. I mean, it's bizarre that, he has, they've attempted to execute him before. It's bizarre in that they, are trying to do this nitrogen hypoxia. It's bizarre that, this is a guy who, the jury didn't vote for death in his case. It was the judge that overrode the jury to sentence him to death. I mean, there's just all sorts of nuance in this case that just really speaks to the fact that this thing shouldn't happen at all. And he did a very good job when we first talked of talking about the pressure of that and the, knowing those things, but still knowing that that the state not just wanted to kill him, but were determined to do it. And, of course he did say, are you prepared to die to be my spiritual advisor? And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is because I think I'm, for better or worse, one of the few people who do this work that would have done this. And I don't know if that speaks to my courage or my lunacy, but it speaks to something.
It definitely does. I am very admirable with it personally, but case by case.
Right.
I wanted to talk a little bit about because you're associated with the death penalty action organization, right?
Right.
And you've made it very clear that your intention is to spread awareness to try to put an end to the death penalty.
Right.
And you've obviously been present in numerous executions, but yet you still decide to risk your safety to help others. So I wanted to ask what drew you to become a death row inmate spiritual advisor, and also how your demeanor has changed from the first time that you did this up till now.
Yeah, I think that this has been, obviously all things like this are gradual. They don't just happen overnight. I'm, obviously a person of deep faith, and that faith is something that has changed and it has grown. I grew up in a very conservative Southern Baptist household, and my life really changed as I guess came into my own and grew more comfortable with myself. I did my undergrad at Auburn University in Alabama, and so this isn't my first foray into Alabama by any stretch. But one of the things that really happened to me that changed my life and really got me to a place where I was able to understand the human experience in a way that I had never had before was while I was in seminary. My mentor, pastor, who I had been very close to for a number of years, called me to his side when he was dying of cancer, and by his side, he revealed to me, with his wife and kids in the next room over, that he had lived his life as a closeted gay man. And when that happened, it took me from this space of certainty to this space of love. I had been so certain about what was right and what was wrong until that moment. And that moment ushered me into this space where I was able to just say, hey, look, like, life is complex. Life is difficult. And there are all sorts of experiences that people have, but the experience that should bring us together is love. And so I knew the love that I had for him, and and I think that and for that matter, I knew the love that he had for his wife and kids as well. But it just spoke to nuance in a way that I'd never engaged before. And I think from there, went to different schools and different places, and I guess as time went on, I kind of learned to love a lot of different people. And one of the things that happened was I got involved with the Troy Davis campaign in Georgia, and everybody, of course, was running around with their "I Am Troy Davis" T-shirts. And interesting kind of aside when all of that was going on, as I had that shirt on, "I Am Troy Davis," and I went in my grandparents' house, and my grandparents were super racist, super classist, sexist. Every ism you can think of, they embodied. Of course, they loved me as their grandson, and we had a relationship, but they were very hateful in a lot of ways. But so when I had a T-shirt on, I expected them to respond in a kind of nasty way or whatever. And my grandmother, when I came in, she saw the T-shirt and she just kind of fawned and, oh my gosh, and I can't, oh, and just I thought she was getting angry, but what she was getting upset about was the fact that, and I'd forgotten this, but her brother's name was Troy Davis, and he was like maimed and died not long after World War II. And so for her, that was a moment to engage with her brother. And what that told me was that it really spoke to my heart that black or white or whatever color, whatever space, you have this stark ability for human connection that transcends all of that stuff. And when given the opportunity and confronted with just a name that represents a variety of people, there was love that came out in that moment. And I think that was a moment that really kind of, I guess, called me or, brought me to this space of really seeing, the, I guess, abolition work as something that could, I guess bridge gaps and speak to different parts of society and, speak to, I guess, the fullness of humanity. And speak, maybe a better way of saying it is speak to our collective humanity in a certain, I guess, in a stark way, if you will. And so, as I was there when the night that Troy Davis was executed, and I'd actually married Emily not too long before that. And I remember that night just being there in Jackson, Georgia, across the highway, and seeing, this mass of people. And I was an Obama kid, back then, and I had definitely, I'd just gotten acquainted with progressive, politics, liberal thinking, or whatever you want to call it. I was so, into that yes we can, hope kind of moment. And I remember that night everybody saying, this isn't going to happen. Obama's going to save him. Obama's going to save him. Everybody kept saying, Obama's going to figure out a way to save him. Now, of course, there's all sorts of questions about what authority did he have, what could he have done. But it was interesting that everybody kept on saying that. They said, at least he's going to come out and give a statement about how horrible this is and, try to stop it or whatever. And, as the night went on, it became very apparent that wasn't nobody going to stop this. And, I think that was a moment for me of kind of realizing that our political system is not created to foster humanity. It's created to foster, this capitalistic impulse of, survival of the fittest, if you will. And I think that, in that moment, I knew that I had to go further, I guess is the best way of saying it. And so after that, I began writing guys on death row, and, that led to activism, and, that activism and engaging some of these guys spiritually led to, me doing the spiritual advising work. And it was, I think that there's been 18 guys thus far that I've worked with who have been executed in a close way. Obviously, there's been a lot more that I've known, and these situations can be absolutely horrible. I mean, I'm not, there are a lot of abolitionists out here, and it's always flowers and rainbows and dandelions and sunflowers and all that kind of stuff. But I'm very much a realist when it comes to all this stuff. I mean, some of these guys, there is no doubt in my mind that they never need to, be in a situation where they could hurt anybody ever again. I mean, one of my guys, very early on, he was basically a serial killer of children, and he asked for pictures of my kids. And, obviously that shows that, hey, this guy is, got issues. And there were other situations like that. But you live and you learn. I mean, but those situations don't mean that that person has, lost or forfeited their humanity. I think we're made in the image of God, and we couldn't do that even if we wanted to. And so I guess I got just more and more, I just came face to face with the fact that this work is difficult, but but it was also, I guess, just a ministry of love. My faith calls me to love people that nobody else would love. I mean, Jesus says in Matthew 25, "What you've done to the least of these, you've done to me." And even in that series of verses, he says, "I was in prison, and either you visited me or you didn't." And so, for me, the calling humanity is it's a deeply spiritual thing for me. It's a deeply spiritual moment of, I guess, being in a relationship with these guys, having communion with these guys is sacramental to me. I mean, it's experiencing the very nature and presence of God. And so, as time went on, situations got more and more intense, and it's only been a few years that spiritual advisors have been allowed in the chamber with guys who are being executed. And my first time being in the execution chamber was last January, and that was with Scott Eisenberg in Oklahoma. And another real moment. Scott was very difficult. I mean, he had beaten to death two elderly people, and in a lot of ways, I think struggled to love himself, much less love me. But he just consistently, there towards the end, spoke in ways that were so affirming, that I didn't expect him to speak. And I remember, I haven't even talked about this a lot, but I remember him saying, I wouldn't have wanted anybody else to do this job. And it just is, speaks to the reality that, that a lot of these guys, this sort of, I think you'll love this phrasing, but this kind of hit it and quit it religion. I mean, getting people saved and getting people to pray the prayer and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that these guys are just like all of us. They're looking for real connection. And with all of my guys, that's what I've tried to bring to the table is, just love and real connection.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way of putting it. I also wanted to talk a little bit about two more things just before I let you go. One, I read your opinion article that you wrote for the Dallas Morning News in 2017.
What did I say?
Good. It was about the. No worries.
I've written a number of opinion articles.
It is A-okay. It was the opinion article you wrote about the Black Lives Matter protest in July. And you said something that really stuck with me. You said, here, let me find, I have the quote written down.
Before you say that, people, a lot of people, obviously my work, I mean, I've gone where, I feel like God has called me to, situations of injustice that feel like God has called me to. I mean, even right now, I've been organizing ceasefire, protests here in Little Rock, even in the midst of doing all this other stuff. And a lot of times people don't, they don't know that. They see the death penalty work and they don't realize that, there's a lot of other things going on. So I'm glad that you brought up the Dallas situation. That's when everybody thought that, figured out, I guess, that I'm the spawn of Satan.
Trust me, all the best people have some people that think that about them.
Of course.
What really stuck with me, though, was that you were talking about the kind of racial oppression that was being faced in general, and that you're called to banish that which is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And that really stuck with me. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about your opinions on kind of the social injustice that comes, not only the other issues that are embedded into death penalty, because obviously it's a very
I think that's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I find with guys on death row is by sharing their humanity with the world, I think it helps the world see humanity in each other. I mean, on some level, if you can love the guy on death row, then surely you can love your neighbor across the street. And so I think that there is I said this the other day. I find that I try to be an evangelist of love and justice. And, I want people to understand that the work that I do is just as much for the public as it is for the guy on death row. And I think those two things go hand in hand. When all of the stuff in Dallas happened, I was, probably 40 feet, somewhere beyond that. Obviously I hadn't gone out there and measured, but very close to those police officers when they were killed. And, you don't see that type of carnage and that type of trauma and not have, just a deep love for them and their families. It's very easy for us to do work against. It's very easy for us to demonize each other. It's harder to find a way to love each other. And I think that these situations on death row, victims' families, the guys on death row, their families, jurors, judges, all of these people involved in these situations, when you call them to spaces of love and justice, you're calling them to see humanity in each other, and you're calling the general public to see humanity in this situation. And I think that is transformative for people who engage those moments.
No, yeah, that's beautiful. 100%. I think it's also another thing that I thought was super important is just discussing in general, what do you think this case and this example is going to set up for the future of death penalty litigation and of this new method of nitrogen hypoxia, and your concerns for what will happen if this method goes forward?
I don't think there's any doubt that if they're successful with this, we're going to see a spike in executions all over the country. And I think the reason for that is that states like Arkansas, where I live, Mississippi, Oklahoma, I think there's a lot of states that very quickly can adapt a protocol, nitrogen hypoxia protocol, and begin executing people. I mean, nitrogen and a mask are a lot easier to get than drugs. And so I think we're looking at an early 1980s lethal injection kind of moment I think this very, very well could change the game. Now, I think that some of the sort of, variables. I mean, obviously, if they gas me to death, that's probably going to stop. That's probably going to keep other states from doing it. I mean, I think that if it's too visceral, I think that could keep other states from doing it. If Kenny, chokes or sort of not chokes, but if he chokes on his own vomit, or if he seizes, or whatever happens, I mean, they just don't know. But if it's especially gruesome, I think that could have some effect on how fast it spreads. But I do know the ease of it makes this moment very scary.
100%. And then you made a statement with death penalty action, because I think today's the 10-day mark, if I'm not wrong, until the execution.
Yeah, it's getting close.
Yeah, and
getting very close.
You made a statement saying, horror is an understatement. The state of Alabama now has permission of a federal court to suffocate its citizens. Let there be no doubt we will resist such tyranny until we can resist no more. Kenny Smith is a child of God. The state of Alabama will never be able to suffocate the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's beautiful. But this whole, I was wondering if you wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know I've already used that word tyranny. I mean, I think it's Southerners. When you grow up in the South and you live throughout the South, whether you're coming from this sort of Civil War moment of resisting government, or if you're coming from this civil rights moment of resisting government, there is there's sort of an ethos that flows through Southern culture of resistance and rebellion. And obviously, rebellion in the Civil War is awful. Rebellion in the civil rights movement is incredibly moral. But I think that is it's just everywhere, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think for me, growing up in Atlanta, I saw what good resistance looks like, good trouble, if you will, Brother John Lewis, his great phrase. I'm a product of where I grew up. I mean, I'm a product of Atlanta. I mean, I was shown what good resistance looks like, moral resistance, what that looks like. And I was also shown, as you engage all of this racism and injustice, I was shown what bad resistance looks like too. So I always wanted to, I say this all the time, I always want to resist well. But I guess what I'm trying to say is tyranny comes in certainly all shapes and sizes. But when a government gets so big that it's comfortable suffocating its citizens and killing its citizens, that government is too big. That government is too powerful. And that government has taken too many liberties, and and I think that even beyond that, them making me sign this waiver and this whole situation speaks of just the fact that that there is such a need to resist. There's such a need for moral, righteous, just resistance, and I feel very certainly called to this moment, and I feel very prepared in terms of my upbringing, in terms of my education. That a lot of those things are culminating in this moment. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to me. I understand that you're flooded right now with
No, it's all good. When you call it, you have a very beautiful, kind, loving spirit, and it was really great talking to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll write you a full message once I'm going to go over, and I'll be.
So do you have my email?
I don't know if I do.
Okay, I'll give you my email.
Perfect.
It's JEFF REY.K.HOOD @gmail. So again, it's JEFFREY.K.HOOD@gmail. Yeah. So, anyways, keep the faith, my friend.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, and
definitely, later, of course. But
everybody, up there, y'all keep Kenny in your just thoughts, prayers, positive energy, the light, whatever you want to call it, man. It's this is a very difficult time for him, and I'm just trying my damnedest to be present for him. I mean, there's no sort of manual on how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways. So, okay, cool, Anya. Well, it was great talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Much. Yes, talk soon. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.